Lawrence Mooney, he's as funny as a funeral. I'd rather take a whippersnipper to my ballsack than have to sit through an hour of that disgusting, lowbrow nonsense. No stars.
Lawrence Mooney, also known as the Moonman, welcome to our very first ever Comedy Legends with Bevo. What a pleasure it is to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Bevo. It is a pleasure to be here. We are recording this in the morning. It's not too early though, so...
Yeah, I made it a little bit later for you, so you can sleep in a little bit, mate. So.
I've actually really got into that fringe kind of way of life, where late nights and later mornings. So,
yes.
Having left breakfast radio, I'm starting to get my sleep patterns back to the nocturnal animal that I am.
Hey, last Saturday night I was there for your show Beauty at the Adelaide Fringe. Great show, we'll talk about it in a moment, but how good it was. I could see the smile on your face as well to be back performing live again.
Oh yeah, live is just such a tonic. You know, you get out there, you've got that immediate rapport with the audience. You know, there's two results in comedy, Bevo, they laugh or they don't. And just to be hit with that wave of laughter from an appreciative audience is absolute magic, and it, you know, puts you on a high for the rest of the night. And being back here in Adelaide is great too. The last time I was here was 2020, and then 2021 didn't happen, so it's great to be back at Fringe.
Yes. And the last couple of years, what else have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
Well, I was very fortunate to have a job in radio right at, you know, when really everything shut down. The last show I did here in 2020 was the Sunday before congregations or audiences were closed down. It went from 500 to 100 to no people were allowed to gather. So gatherings were over and done with. And for a lot of comedians, that was it for a while. They had to go and get a day job. Perish the thought, because work is hard. Comedy's easier than work. And so I was very fortunate. In that time, we moved house, actually. Moved to the country. I'm living in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales now, so that was a nice thing to be able to do. And yeah, there was a couple of Zoom corporates, and then all of that dried up. People just started cancelling gigs left, right and centre. So yeah, there wasn't a lot on live for comedians.
And you've also been involved in recent times with helping out a friend with bespoke furniture from recycled timber.
Yes.
Hopefully I got that correct. What's that been like, and you know, what's that taught you, I suppose?
That has been an amazing experience. It's been a really redemptive experience because, you know, I've gone through being, you know, dumped by the radio station, and you probably read a bit about that in the press. And so in order to get my mind off that and keep my you know, myself busy, I asked a mate of mine, Rabs, whether I could come and work for him. And yeah, he uses recycled timber to make furniture. You know, anything from old telegraph poles to post and rail fences, anything, you know, because there's all this beautiful hardwood out there sitting in piles. And that has been a really meditative process, you know, whether you're working on the sander or thinning wood or thickening wood rather, or, you know, using the trimmer. You know, there's a pace and a rhythm to it that is really nice, and it's actually really got me quite centred and back in contact with myself. So it's been a nice thing to do. I know I'm sounding all very bhagwan there, but it's been great. And, you know, you get to the end of the day and you can see your work, which is quite a satisfying thing. You know, you can see what you've achieved when you're working with your hands. I mean, comedy is very different. You get off and these, you know, made people laugh for an hour, and it's a different high, but yeah, you can't rush the wood.
And you touched on it before, with living in the Southern Highlands.
Yep.
Does that make you a country gent now? You've gone from living in the city to the country, and what's it like?
A country gent is a very difficult thing to say, because you don't want to spoonerise that, do you? You don't want to be a gentry. So I love it. You know, I was ready for the tree change. The bloody fresh air, Bevo. Everything about it. And I don't know whether it's, you know, a sign of age, but I've just started watching birds a lot more. I'm just so into birds. And, you know, there's no shortage of bird life out in the Southern Highlands. You get the lot from king parrots. I saved a kookaburra. I reckon kookaburra's really a very intelligent bird, because I could hear this squawking and the dog was barking, and I went outside and this baby kookaburra was sitting up on top of the bin, and it just screamed at me. It was the loudest thing to, make me go away. So I put out some dog food, put the bins together, and it jumped down, and so it was saved. And I came out and there was all these peck marks in the dog food, and the bird had gone. I saw it on the clothesline, and then its mother came down and it flew off with its mother. That bird follows my car up the driveway every day. It's like escorts me.
Wow.
And just looks at me like, yeah, you're the one. It is amazing.
That is an amazing story. So they're super intelligent, obviously. Then
I
as well.
reckon, or very loyal, or got great memories. I'm not too sure what, but they tend to live in the same kind of area. They will, take on a garden, and they have a lifespan of 11 years. So Cookie, as my daughter has called her, Cookie the Kookaburra, is going to be with us for a while. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Now we better get to your show, Beauty. And I was there on Saturday night, as I mentioned, and it was
rude,
absolutely,
isn't it, Bevo?
it was brilliant. I must admit though, you mentioned before your daughter, and when your daughter and wife see some of your shows and your family and maybe grandma or others, do they sort of go, oh, this is a bit cringy, and what's the feeling like when they see your show, and yeah, tell us more about it, because you do go into all sorts of things like pubic hairs and anal, and yeah.
I was confronting when you say anal, Bevo. Yeah. Well, I've got this obsession at the moment with politicians' anuses. And I blame it on the calibre of the political debate in this country. I'm saying basically any policy launch, any explanation, any apology, I'm so cynical now that I can't take it seriously. And so, yes, I've been focusing on thinking about what the politicians' anuses would be like. And I can tell you that Barnaby Joyce's would just be a raggedy mess, because he's a beer and Corona guy. So just going back to when family come to see it, my family are very understanding and very forgiving, I've got to say. So that's a great thing. I've got a 22-year-old daughter. So sometimes when she's been to previous shows, she's like, wow, that's really embarrassing. I'm here with my boyfriend. But she's just fine with that now. She knows what to see, what to expect. And I suppose in a way, there's a persona up there too. It's not necessarily me. I'm a bit more vulgar on stage than I am in day-to-day life. I'm a bit more different.
That was actually my next question. Yeah. Is there a different side to Lawrence Mooney away from the stage?
Yeah, Lawrence Mooney, a few people go, that's absolute bullshit. Lawrence Mooney can be content living quite a quiet life. I love talking about Lawrence Mooney, the third person. And he needs that, because he can get way overexcited and he can be a real handful. So he needs to go and have some quiet time on his own. And it's not all about being that, as the advertiser said, lewd, crude and rude man up there on stage. But I do enjoy that too. I do enjoy vulgarity as a vehicle for, comedy. And I think that, it's a Rabelaisian thing, where it's like, it's a anti-authoritarian, it's an agitator. It gets, people a bit up and about, makes them kind of like go, wow. But it's like such a part of the human condition, all of that sort of stuff, that naughtiness. So I like it. But yeah, this show is particularly full on in that regard. And yes, as you mentioned, it's got a great spot on pubic hair. We won't mention too much, because
no, you don't want to give it away.
There's a reveal at the end of the show, a visceral reveal.
I looked around at the audience and just seeing some people like, whoa, I can't believe you just said that. And I think that's great. And you probably get joy out of that as well.
There's sometimes I get a little bit self-conscious when you look down into the front row and there's a mother with two daughters down there, and you think to yourself, why have they come along to this? They might have seen me on Dirty Laundry Live on the ABC, or they might have heard me on the radio, but it's a very different context, and you can just see the eyes. Like, oh my God. There was a father and daughter in the audience the other night, and after the show came up and he said, thank you very much. I was there with my daughter, and I looked at her and I said, who was who was cringing more? And she said, Dad was like really embarrassed when you were talking about dog style. I looked across at him and he was just red.
Now we've got to get to the voices because you are the man of doing many different voices and you're very good at it. Did you get tips or have you had training? Where do you come up with the voices yourself?
Well, I never considered myself an impersonator or a mimic, but I've always enjoyed it. When I'd watch, stand-up comedy on video, there was this great American impersonator that used to do Jack Nicholson and Richard Nixon. And so I've always quite enjoyed it. And I started life as an actor, or my showbiz life. I studied acting at the National Theatre Drama School. And in a way, acting is mimicry or being, like a chameleon. You kind of absorb what's around you. Anyway, the way that Malcolm Turnbull started was I was just on the couch at home and watching the 7:30 report, becoming, infuriated. That's why not the 7:30 report, Q&A. I used to watch it to make myself angry. And Malcolm was on there and he was speaking away, and I started just speaking like him. I was saying to my wife, I'd like to hear him say fire hydrant. That'd be a good word for him to say, and saying words that would be great for him, like environment, February, because that is his favourite month of the year. This month, February. Remember, it's got 2 R's in it, Bevo. And this is the time of year that Lucy and I go swimming in the ocean. And Lou goes, my wife said, you've nailed it. Why don't you throw it into your stand-up? And I said, I'm not really an impersonator. I'm not one of those guys. But then just started doing it, and it became very popular. I ended up doing it on Triple M all over the country, did it into every capital city. So I'd be sitting there on alternate days doing it in Perth, Adelaide, of course, with Ruin Dits. And then it ended up getting me a job in breakfast radio. So 4 years later, Malcolm's still going. And he still, doesn't mind putting his bib in because he hates ScoMo, because ScoMo, of course, knifed him.
Yes.
Took the glittering prize of the Prime Minister. I'd taken it off Tony Abbott previously. But ScoMo, what a terrible individual, a man who shat his pants at the Engadine McDonald's in 1997 after the Sharkies' one and only Super League loss to the Broncos. Make no mistake, that's what you're dealing with, a man that poops his ducks. Yeah. That's a rumour that started when ScoMo became the Prime Minister. A friend of mine, Brendan Anakin, just looked on Twitter. He goes, someone's just read here that ScoMo shat his pants in 1997 at the Engadine McDonald's. And I said, we're running with it. We're going to say it every morning.
Yeah, why not? And
eventually, I think maybe it was Carl Sanderlands confronted him with the rumour. He goes, there's this rumour going around that you shat yourself at the Engadine Macca's. Because, of course, Engadine's not very far from Cronulla at all. It's just around the corner. So whenever there was a caller on from Engadine, we'd say, have you been to the McDonald's? And it's like, yep. And then I think somebody actually put up a plaque in the car park, just without permission, or stuck it to the Macca's saying, this is the McDonald's where Scott Morrison shat his pants. So it's really got this folkloric momentum where people just accept it as given, which I love.
It's brilliant. What's the reaction of some of these legends like your Big Mouths and Russell Crowe when you actually, have you seen how they feel about you doing their voices, or you've spoken to them about
Malcolm, I saw interviewed by David Campbell and Sonia Kruger on Today Extra, and they said to him, have you ever thought about who might play you in Malcolm Turnbull, the movie? What actor? And he's like, actually, good question. And they said, what about Lawrence Mooney? And they put on this clip, and it was me saying, environment and fire hydrant and pronouncing all of the letters in all of the words with my wonderful vocabulary and diction. And he's done the big, And he goes, okay, you know what? Fair cop. That's not too bad, fair cop. And you know why I pronounce my words very properly? I was in radio as a young man, as a radio journalist, and if you had to phone a story into the station, you had to be quite precise in the way you spoke, otherwise I couldn't understand you. And it's like, okay, you've kind of missed the joke, Malcolm. You're explaining why you speak like that rather than, yeah, Lucy, and my friends all love the Moonman, and the king should kind of like be gentler with the jester rather than go, yeah, like I can explain why I speak like that. But it was interesting. And Russell Crowe, I know, and the first time he heard me do an impersonation of him, I was doing a spot for the Rabbitohs. They were down in Melbourne playing Melbourne Storm, and the night before the game, they have a dinner together, and have a bit of a team meeting, and then he likes to get stand-up comedians to do a bit of a show, just so the boys have a bit of a laugh or a relax and then off to bed. And so I could see these young blokes, and there's this, when a comedian's in a room and you can really see the audience, they get a bit self-conscious. They're just young men. So rather than do jokes, I just got up there and did Rusty Crowe. When he starts speaking to you, what he does is he just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. His voice he outballs you. And in the end, you just got to go, oh, g'day, Russell, how are you? He kind of takes all of the baritone for himself, and his big agates are just pulling his voice down deeper and deeper. Yeah. And so I know that he's heard it, and he actually texted me because he goes, taking the piss out of me, you funny bastard. Good on you. So I've spent some time with Russell. He's invited me to his villa at Crown Casino.
Oh, wow.
So when he stays at Crown, there's these, kind of houses on the, I don't know, whatever floor, top floor. And so I've been up there and enjoyed his hospitality. He's fun. Yeah. Come up, Moonman. Let's have some fun together. So it's actually quite fun doing Russell. And I used to do Rusty Crowe on Triple M, and I don't know whether he's heard a lot of those, because I used to do, make-believe role plays between him and Terry Irwin, because, Terry and me are quite close. We do one called the NRMA Koala. That's where Terry burns the fur on my ass and then gives me a drink of water, like I've been in a bushfire. So yeah, it is fun. Yeah. And the one thing that I discovered doing Malcolm Turnbull, because I did a show called An Evening with Malcolm Turnbull. I was in the Factory in the Gardens in 2018, I think it was. And this is something that Barry Humphries discovered a long time ago through Dame Edna Everage. The character can say many things that you can't, because the character's different to you. And so, Malcolm can be up there talking about all sorts of different things, and it gives you a lot of license. There's a freedom with the character. It's lovely.
Speaking of characters, one of my favourites, I mentioned it before, is Rudy Vanderstone.
Rudy Vanderstone.
Yes, because the Rudy, he's a harsh man.
He's a TV critic for the people that have never heard of him. Yep.
Where did the Rudy story come from? Where did you decide to come up with him?
So again, I was just messing around with voices, and I'd had this. I grew up in a place in Melbourne called Bayswater, and we belonged to the soccer club because my parents are from Liverpool in England, and so that was going to be the code we played. I eventually broke away and went to AFL, or VFL at the time anyway. Started playing soccer, and the club was kind of very strongly English and Dutch. So these kind of, footballing nations had come together to create Bayswater United football team. And so our coach, Mr. Ollie Rook, he had one of those voices, and so even as a young kid, it's like, he speaks quite funny, doesn't he? Sorry I'm late, boys, I missed my car today. And so it's like, oh, this is cool. So I probably started doing that as a kid, Anyway, it always stuck with me, and I decided to do a character called Rudy Vanderstone, became this Dutch comedian. And so on some, open mic nights or other kind of like, basically list shows where comedians, are trying new material. Open mic nights is the correct term. I got up and used to do stand-up comedian, do, routines as Rudy. What you all probably know about Holland is the boy that had his finger in the dike. And yes, I know there's all those jokes about him putting his finger in the lesbian, but that's not what I'm talking about. And then he'd do these massive raves on lesbians and sex and whatever. When I started in radio, my anchor Christopher Page had seen Rudy, and we were thinking about different characters, and he goes, "Why don't you get the Dutchman to be a TV critic?" And so that's where it came from, and so Rudy became Australia's harshest TV critic. Yeah, Rudy Vanderstone. I ate everything.
He got himself in a bit of trouble as well a couple of years ago on Studio 10.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So we had a thing, Rudy's steaming brown Logies, and got a letter from the people that own the Logies brand. I think of them anyway, saying cease and desist using that term. That is our brand and trademark. So we did immediately, and then Logie Baird, who invented the TV, after whom the Logies is named, we called them the Steaming Brown Bairds. Anyway, so he was going to have this awards afternoon or awards morning on the radio show, going through his worst and best for the year, and eventually giving the Steaming Brown, what was then a Logian, excuse me for using that TM, gave the Steaming Brown to Costa Georgiadis, who was a friend of the show and a mate of mine and a lovely man. So we had these toilet plungers with the Steaming Brown, and then there was other categories. And so to kind of publicise what we were going to do, the producer of our show spoke to the producer of Studio 10 and said, do you want Rudy Vanderstone to come on? And the EP of Studio 10 said, oh yeah, I hear him on the radio, I love Rudy Vanderstone, so let's get him on. So I go on with because Rudy's a plumber, first and foremost, from right. He's just a TV critic on the side. And so he's got his, blue plumber's overalls on, a bow tie, his pipe, he always smokes a pipe. And he goes on Studio 10, and so he's explaining his awards night that he's going to do, the Steaming Browns, and, going through the categories. And eventually someone says, I think it's Angela Bishop, I'm a bit afraid to ask, but what do you think about our show? And I said, well, I love Studio 10. I love it in the mornings. I get up, I do some work. I always make sure I'm near the television when Studio 10's on. I make myself a big cup of coffee and sit down to some casual racism and slut shaming. And Natasha Belling's mouth just went, and she goes, we're going to take a break. And you can hear people, Hildebrand laughing in the background. And their executive producer knew what I was going to do. He said, don't hold back, go for it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have been saying that to his cast, because they went straight to an ad. They came back, and Natasha Belling goes, in that last segment, if there was anything said that there was some offensive things said, and I'm here to apologise for you. That's all from Studio 10 today. Bang, gone. And that was in reference to a couple of incidents that had happened on Studio 10, where they had been accused of casual racism and slut shaming. So it wasn't just me, going rogue.
Yeah. And what was the situation after that? Because obviously you've been on Studio 10 a couple of weeks ago, so... Yeah,
Rudy's never going back.
But Lawrence Mooney's allowed on there.
Yeah. Lawrence Mooney's allowed on there, yeah. Look, to tell you the truth, I don't think there was any complaints or whatever. They just did a preemptive apology because, it's mid-morning, Studio 10. And it changed then. There used to be quite a big lineup, and now it's just Sarah and her Irish friend.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you've got a podcast as well now, Moons. Yeah, with Matt Hardy, Saturday Afternoon Fever. Tell us all about this and where we can hear it.
Well, you can hear it wherever you get your podcasts. I think it's on the Listener app, but, podcasts are out there. It's done very well. Matt Hardy wrote a book called Saturday Afternoon Fever, very much along the line of Nick Hornby's Fever Pitch. In fact, he said to Nick Hornby, I really love the template of this book. Do you mind if I borrow it? And Nick Hornby said to him, you can go for your life, because I borrowed it from an American baseball book whose name escapes me. He said, just if it's a bestseller, acknowledge me in the, put me on the front cover or something. So basically Saturday Afternoon Fever is a tale of a, St Kilda tragic that has just gone through a lot of pain and always wanted to be on the other side of the boundary line, but wasn't ever good enough. And so it's about Matt's love of St Kilda Football Club, and also his growing up in the suburbs and all that kind of nostalgia and rites of passage. And so the podcast is him reading from the book, and then we just digress. If that is a thought starter, we just start talking about whatever it is that has excited us. And we've been surprised by the success of it. It's been, in the top 3 on Chartable in all football codes.
Wow.
Yeah, for the last year. So we started it probably this time last year, and there's 30 episodes up. We're just about to finish the book, and there's probably, another 11 episodes are going to end up being there. So it'll come to about 40 episodes. And then once the book's finished, we're going to be a bit lost, because it's like, what else do we do next? So that's going to transition into the Fever. So Saturday Afternoon Fever is just going to become the Fever. And whatever it is that we want to talk about that week, we're just going to present to one another and bang on about it. Because, there's a following. And it's interesting because it's a very strong AFL football following. But there's also people who have given us reviews saying, I don't know the rules, I don't know what football is, but you guys just have a wonderful chemistry, and I love the podcast, and it's very funny. So, yeah.
Brilliant.
Get into it. Saturday Afternoon Fever.
Beautiful.
With Matt Hardy and Lawrence Mooney.
And before we let you go, Moons, I just wanted to ask you, the love for comedy, where it first began, was there like a John Candy or someone on TV that you idolised that made you want to, become a comedian?
Yeah, and that was Dave Allen. Oh. So my dad, in fact, the whole family used to sit down and watch Dave Allen on the ABC. Our TV was locked onto the ABC because my parents were from England, It was our equivalent of the BBC. And very rarely did we go onto commercial stations. So it was all of that British comedy, Dad's Army, The Dick Emery Show, Fawlty Towers, early Monty Python's Flying Circus, and Dave Allen. And there was this guy telling anecdotes, sitting in his chair and always smoking a cigarette, and had a glass of scotch there. And I just loved it, but I didn't know that was stand-up comedy, but I wanted to be Dave Allen. And then I became, not the class clown, but I got laughs at school, and that was also a lightning moment. That's the flash in the head. It's like, yes. And it wasn't until probably a bit later that I went to start seeing stand-up comedy. In fact, it was in Melbourne at The Last Laugh. I went along and saw Richard Stubbs. He was the first comedian I ever saw.
I remember Stubbs.
And he tore the room apart. And it was like, oh my God. And it was just, he's standing there in the light with the microphone. I'm laughing my head off. He's talking about, going camping as a kid and spiders and mice. And it was just a revelation. And that's when I thought, that's what I want to do. And it wasn't until many years later, I was a bit of a late starter, Bevo. I started at 29, stood up for the first time, and I was at drama school. I used to go to the Espy on Tuesday nights and watch Fleety and Judith Lucy, Anthony Morgan, The Empty Pockets, Andy Goodwin, and started doing comedy. And I was with a pretty good batch of comedians coming through. Dave Hughes, Rove McManus, Corinne Grant, Peter Hellier, myself, Will Anderson.
Wow.
Andrea Powell. It's like, it was a pretty strong lineup. Fleety's still there, of course, you know, and all that group. Steve Bedwell, who is one of the greats, and I'd love to see him do more stand-up. He's, you know, had some health issues in the last little bit, but it was just such a rich period of comedy, and I've been very lucky to be a part of it and have my slice of the cake too. And
before we finish today, Beauty, give it a plug once again, Moons. Where can we see it, and how long is it going for?
It's going to be on until the 20th, down at the Gardens. I'm at Babylon until the 28th, and then in March I'm at Umbrella Revolution. Spit it out. So yeah, basically I'm here until March 20. So check your guides, grab a ticket and come along. It's a great show. Got 4.5 stars in the Advertiser. Bang.
So it should.
Yeah. In fact, the last time I was here, I got 4.5 stars in the Advertiser. That makes 9 stars.
And Rudy would give it a 5, surely.
Absolutely. Lawrence Mooney, he's as funny as a funeral. Go and spend your money on something else, like a kebab. I'd rather take a whippersnipper to my ball sack than have to sit through an hour of that disgusting, lowbrow nonsense. No stars.
Oh, what a way to finish off with Lawrence Mooney. Thanks so much for joining us on Comedy Legends with Bevo.